Anti-Afro Svengalis, I want to focus on a specific aspect of sentencing with respect to Dumpsy D. Derell and the charges that he is facing. 5 counts of healthcare fraud and 4 counts of aggravated identity theft. But before I do that, I want you to listen to this question and answer. I'm going to highlight something that I discussed while on Photon's panel on Sunday. So stay tuned and I will return.
Can you explain where the Medicaid dollars funding this HSS or HHS program come from, the tax dollars?
Well, I'm not an expert on how Medicaid works. I mean, a lot of it's federal money. There's state money too. It obviously flows through the state.
So you just heard, this is the acting U.S. Attorney. He was talking about rampant fraud going on in Minnesota. I'm pointing out his comment while I'm putting his bio here on the screen. You can look here. You can click the link below the title. What he said, that he's not an expert in Medicaid, but he's prosecuted all types of fraud cases. It's vast experience as a U.S. prosecutor. But he says he's not an expert in Medicaid. The point I'm trying to make, just because someone is an attorney, just because someone has a license as an attorney, doesn't give them superior knowledge in all areas of the law. Medicaid and Medicare are governed by the law. He doesn't know Medicaid and Medicare like experts do who work in the field and deal with Medicaid and Medicare. That's not a sin. It's just that he doesn't know everything and he's acknowledging it. Why do you think they call expert witnesses? If they knew everything, they wouldn't need to call an expert witness in these areas. There are some subjects who just can't accept that they don't know everything. I've stated it once, I'll state it again. I don't speak on anything unless I know about the topic. There are those who feel inadequate because they don't know everything. That's ridiculous. Here's an example of someone doing what he should do, acknowledging he's not an expert in Medicaid. Now, one more question that was asked during this press conference.
Have you heard from Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison with respect to your work on this case in particular?
Certainly, I know the governor's office has reached out about this case, yes.
I just want to point out, this is the governor of Minnesota, Walz, W-A-L-Z, who I'm sure was not happy to hear about this in the manner that it went down. I mentioned it before. Governors, mayors, all of these leaders, they would love for people to let them know what the hell is going on in their state or in their city before it hits the damn news. So I was talking about how they will get on the job when we were talking about the state of Georgia. Had it not been taken care of, trust and believe the governor would have done something about it. And I'm talking about with DJ Jackass. They don't like these types of surprises. And when they are alerted to the situation that needs to be addressed, they're going to address it because it's going to mess up the amount of money that the feds are going to give the state. Why would they blow it off? They're not going to blow it off. They just don't get notified properly or in time. And I'm also going to put the article below the title if you want to read up, and I encourage that you do read up about what happened in Minnesota. I mean, it's just so incredibly vast. The fraud that is going on is like essentially 100% fraudulent. Some of the programs where you had like scores of people signing up to manage programs, and you can listen to this entire press conference as well. If you like, I'll put that link. Fraud is rampant. When you know fraud exists, report the fraud. It's not your problem that a person is going to end up in prison. But there are those we know don't want to report anything, but it doesn't end there. Those who decide not to report fraud when they become aware of it is one thing, but then they try to lay a guilt trip on you because you decide to report fraud. If they don't report fraud, don't report fraud. But you can't impose terms on other people. You can't force people to be your slave because you have discomfort with people reporting the truth and reporting law violations. Whoever has a problem with it, it is their problem. It's not anyone else's but theirs. And they run the risk of being accused of collusion. If they know about fraud, they're surrounded with fraud, and they just turn the other way. That's an easy way, a quick way to get caught up in a situation. Whoever doesn't want to report, don't report. But I know one damn thing, it's not going to have anything to do with me as far as what I'm going to report. I'm going to go on to the main commentary. And I want to say this before I continue. There was rumblings also in Photon's live stream, something along the lines of, why are you getting involved? Or why are you involved so much? And this doesn't involve you. The hell it doesn't. This is USA versus Spears. Dempsey D. Derell, Dempsey Spears, whatever you want to call the freak, committed crimes against the people of the United States of America, which includes me. So this is every bit my business. Criminal charges aren't private business. It's the public's right to know. The crimes are against us, those residing in the United States of America. USA versus Spears, and don't forget it. So what I have heard, the rumblings in and around the Umar Johnson sector, that, quote, Dempsey D. Derell doesn't have a criminal history. So therefore, he's going to be given leeway, or he'll be given credit for that. So in order to get that credit, that has to be officially ratified by the judge. The judge will determine whether or not he is considered to have a criminal conviction. But for the sake of this video, we're going to zero him out and say he has no criminal history. He has no criminal justice background. Zero. We'll start at zero, and we're going to go from there. Even if Dempsey D. Derell doesn't have this background, it doesn't stop the judge from imposing a prison sentence. So I'm going to talk to you about what's called sentencing enhancements. Although a person has no criminal background whatsoever, there are multiple other factors that absolutely can land their ass in a prison cell. So let's talk about a few of these. What they're going to do, they're going to determine whether or not Dempsey D. Derell has a juvenile justice history. Has he been adjudicated by a juvenile court? We don't say convicted, and we don't say crime when it's involving juveniles. That's going to be a factor if he has a history. And if he has a history of stealing, in particular, they're going to add points for that. That's an enhancement. Any infringement upon the rights of the individual or individuals, that's an enhancement. Did his crimes create substantial financial hardship for anyone involved? That's an enhancement. Did Dempsey D. Derell's crime result in the status of a criminal livelihood? Was that his primary means of living? That's an enhancement. How they calculate that? They use the minimum wage. And did he make annually $2,000 more than the minimum wage? If he made that amount of money on an annual basis, that's considered criminal livelihood. And if he used a legit job as a front to facilitate his crimes, that's considered criminal livelihood. Now, criminal livelihood sentencing enhancement can only be applied to healthcare fraud in Dempsey D. Derell's circumstances. The criminal livelihood cannot be applied to the aggravated identity theft counts. So he's in the clear in that respect. But here's the kicker. If you have a sentencing enhancement that meets the criteria for criminal livelihood, you cannot be scored any lower than 13 on the federal sentencing guideline. And look at it here. Level 13 carries prison time. That is in level 13, zone C. We're looking at months. If you go to zone C, offense level 13, that's 12 to 18 months. That's the absolute minimum of months. And guess what, folks? We're not even at 2 years. Based on meeting criteria of criminal livelihood, the sentencing range for Dumpsy D. Derell cannot start at anywhere else except 13. That is the absolute minimum level that the sentencing for Dumpsy D. Derell has to land. But we're not even at 24 months. In the event he is convicted of aggravated identity theft, we're not even at 2 years because it has the mandatory minimum of 24 months. He's going to have to shoot down to level 17, where the 24 months, aka 2-year sentencing range, starts. So that's in the second red spot. So another sentencing enhancement is the crime classified as one that is a pattern of criminal conduct. What do you think? You think it's a pattern of criminal conduct based on all that he has done so far, based on what we know? Because, folks, there's going to be more information coming out. Just maintain the reality. This is all we have, and still he's meeting criteria. So let's go down to theft, fraud, and or property destruction. Now, these could be counted as dual, or they may be considered repetitive since the crime itself involves fraud and or property destruction, theft. That will be something they'll have to argue in court because the prosecutor probably will try to include it. Then the defense attorney will have to say why it shouldn't be included. It is doubling up or tripling up because he's already charged with fraud and theft. So an aggravating role, did he serve as an organizer, a manager, leader, or supervisor in the process of this criminal perpetration? The answer, of course, folks, tell me, I'm the Godfather. That's a bullshit on YouTube. But when he perpetrated these crimes, was he in a leadership role? Come on, folks. We know that he was. God, people, come on. This is so, man, this is like, you can't in a million years make this shit up. So Dumpsy gets a pass because he did not hit the $10 million mark. So he can't be classified as a criminal enterprise. Did his crimes have anything to do with vulnerable people? Is it a circumstance where he should have known the people who he perpetrated these crimes against, the people who were impacted? Should Dumpsy D. Derell have known they are vulnerable? If that's the case, then this is another sentencing enhancement. Let's go back to the chart. Just with this information here, even excluding everything else on this list except for criminal livelihood, that puts him at level 13, zone C. And if there's a conviction on any of the aggravated identity counts, we got to shoot him down to level 17. Pretending to address the issues of those who have mental health challenges very clearly classifies these people as vulnerable. Even more so, driving people to medical appointments. This means people have qualified through Medicaid and Medicare of being unable to independently travel to medical appointments, and riding the bus is not deemed safe. That's a medical certification the doctor will provide, not just elderly people. So in this circumstance, wouldn't they be considered vulnerable? And we also have to recognize that not all people who die are young. It's either the elderly people who are getting transportation or those who have serious health issues that make it high risk for them to travel independently. Whatever the case, he accessed their information, and they fall under the vulnerable category of a sentencing enhancement. I wanted to come on here and just hone specifically on this piece because this has to be stated over and over again. Do not forget, remind the world, not having a criminal record is basically irrelevant because you have all these other elements that can enhance your sentence. Let's get some other facts going here. 99% of those convicted of aggravated identity theft receive prison time. Now, the 1% could have had some extenuating circumstance. It could have been a health issue. Could have been anything. Could be they died before the sentencing actually was imposed. I don't know. But 99% do time. The only way he is going to escape a mandatory minimum. Now, let's not lose sight of the fact what minimum means. Starting at doesn't mean it begins and ends at 24 months. Aggravated identity theft requires a mandatory minimum of 2 years. The average sentence for individuals convicted under multiple counts was 74 months. Those convicted just of aggravated identity theft got 25 months. Those getting the higher end sentences were convicted of another felony or had multiple counts. And check this out, 45.4% had little or no prior criminal history. There you go, folks. Is that going to stop a judge from imposing a prison sentence? What I think is important to recognize are the statistics. 45% of those convicted of aggravated identity theft have no criminal history. I would like to add on to that. I venture to say that they were engaged in all kinds of other bullshit and just finally got caught. I'll put money on that. The judge can also deviate, but it doesn't look good. The 95% of those sentenced were sentenced within the guideline range. The judge has the discretion to go outside the range to some degree. It is not looking good. What would Dumpsy D. Derell have to offer in order to escape what so many others, or most people, ended up having to deal with in the end when sentencing was imposed? We're going to wait and see. But as it stands now, I'm going to go with he's at Zone C, level 13 to start with. And it's got to be bumped or pushed down to 17 because he needs to start at 24 months if he gets convicted of aggravated identity theft. In the meantime, folks, stick around because I got more coming your way. Buyer beware.